Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. We weren't nervous about our new striker taking the last penalty there, were we? Puts it in and wins the third place trophy. Probably the most pointless penalty shootout we've ever had. Thanks everyone for sticking with us. Appreciate that went a little bit longer than what we'd anticipated. I'm Chris McAway and I am your sole host for the night. Appreciate everyone that stuck with us so far. Fair to say a better second half performance, I think, than the first. First was relatively uneventful, but I don't think we did anything particularly well or outstanding in the first half. But second half, it looks as though we stepped it up a bit of a level. We looked a little bit more forward thinking, a bit more progressive. And a few players looked, gave better account of themselves, I think I would say, in that second half. Let me know your thoughts. This is an opportunity for me to be very comments focused, which is what I'm going to try and do. And interestingly, I was going to ask about this, but Franny Weldon's beaten me to it. That was the first time we had seen the away shirt in action. What were your thoughts, Franny? Yours are quite clear. Not a fan of it. I think I'm very neutral about the shirt. I can see what they're trying to do. It gives me a little bit too much of a flashback to the away kit that we were wearing when Henrik broke his leg in that infamous season back in I think it was '99 possibly when we wore that. Which I actually liked that strip, but I'm not entirely sure that's the one I want to give homage to. Interesting that they rolled Henrik out for the for the marketing for that. But however, it's all about opinions and. Emerald Abroad, beg your pardon, Emerald Abroad says no, it's beautiful, which is fair. I think that this is the right of the fans. Some people will like the new strip, some people won't. I am quite jealous of the Roma third kit that has been doing the rounds on the socials. That for me should be what the level of quality that Adidas should be providing. But that's my opinion. I just think that one's absolutely stunning. Interestingly enough, a few changes came on there. Stephen Welsh got a run out and actually managed to make it through the game unscathed, which was nice to see. And would I be alone in saying I think he actually gave a pretty good account of himself in that game? He handled what was quite a potent threat in Alan San-Maximin in that second half. It looked like he timed his tackles quite well and looked relatively comfortable. I don't think we were under too much pressure in that second half. So, maybe a little bit of praise for Stephen Welsh for his performance there. But does that change anyone's view on whether or not they want him to stay at the club? Joe Hamilton, welcome, Joe. Always good to see you. Wee Jamesy, the best player on the park. What does that tell us? Well, it's. I think, as a few people have said, has James Forrest transcended from being, a player himself in his career was a little bit divisive early on, but now actually seems to be, he's got that kind of real renaissance. He's at the twilight years of his Celtic career, and he's still showing that he can make a meaningful contribution. I don't think we can rely on James Forrest to be a starter as we go into the season, but I certainly think if you're looking for someone to come on late in a game, maybe to help manage it or to help get a late winner or solidify a lead, you'd look at James Forrest on the bench and you'd feel fully confident about bringing him on. And it was interesting to see that he made it through the full 90 minutes there. So good to see. And he was on the end of a particularly bad challenge at one point. So really pleased that he did well there. Robbo, you're in. James Forrest, unreal. And Yamada, flying machine. Yeah, we did get to see a half of our new striker, Shin Yamada. I think he looked relatively good. We've got to be very, very patient. It's his first appearance. It's 45 minutes. It's in a friendly. I think there's probably a lot more to come from him. But for me, he showed off a couple of good things. I think you're right. A lot of people saying pace. Mark Mackay comes in to echo what I was going to say there. Yamada looks great, very strong on the ball and quick. He did show good strength a couple of occasions there, and he's got an eye for a goal. And as we saw at the end there, he's also got the mental strength to step up and take a penalty in his first appearance. And okay, it wasn't maybe the best penalty that we saw, but actually it went into the net, and that's all that matters. So yeah, and certainly keen to see more of Yamada. But do we still need that additional striker? I think we do. I have no issue if Yamada plays himself into the first position, but at the present he's very much an unknown quantity. And when we look at Aramida and we look at Johnny Kenny, would we feel comfortable going into the new season and indeed into the Champions League qualifier with either of those players at the moment? I think that'll be quite a contentious point as we go forward. Paul Maguire, you're in. Trusty looked decent tonight. Hail, yet another player that kind of lasted the match. He looked pretty solid, actually. I mean, I think Carter Vickers gave a better account of himself in the first half, obviously getting minutes and looking better, which is good. I think Trusty, again, he's looking a little bit more comfortable in that position as well. So, yeah, I wouldn't say either of them looked particularly out of place or out of shape today. I think they looked pretty good. Brown Warrior, you're in to say double down. I'm very impressed with Donovan. The pre-season looks a long-term fix in the back in Kerman. There was one moment where I thought this early on in the second half when Donovan came on, Donovan was actually progressing up the park and doing a couple of layoffs with Tilly. It was actually Donovan that got the cross in. I can't actually recall too many crosses coming in from Marco Tilio tonight, but I would agree. I think Donovan has looked throughout this pre-season like he's got potentially something to offer. Maybe a good candidate to go out on loan, possibly, to get more exposure to that first team football. Because what we don't want to see is him kind of festering down in the B team, where I don't think the players are getting enough of a competitive environment to develop under. A few people talking about Osmond. Osmond came on interestingly enough to play in what looked to the left-hand sort of inside forward or wing position. Cut in a couple of times and certainly had the appetite for shooting a goal. Shots didn't really come off, but it looked hungry, which I quite like. And I like an attacking player or a striker to look like that. So interesting to get your thoughts on the short amount of time we saw Osmond there as well. Anti-fascist Juve came in. Anamura very composed on the ball. Yeah, I was wanting to come to Anamura because I would probably say on reflection, looking back at the match, there were a few contenders, but I think Anamura may have been our best player. Few people have mentioned James Forrest. I think he's in with a really good shout as well. But I thought Anamura overall looked very, very solid. Showed a good strength. Actually, a couple of occasions looked as though he was very capable and comfortable in the air. Does seem to be a player that wants to help build the play. I was a little concerned in the first half that he's spending an awful lot of time coming into the centre of the park. And we saw Greg Taylor sometimes do that to good effect, but we also saw the negative side where, if we do get caught on the counter, we suddenly we're exposed there, and it puts a lot of responsibility onto the winger on that side. So, interested to hear people's thoughts on Anamura. Is he looking like a capable backup to Kieran Tierney? Certainly for me, he's not done himself any harm with his performances in pre-season. I think he's looked very, very good. So yeah, I would be keen to see more of him. A few other people saying Trusty looked good. Triple H J has come in to say I think Bernardo is a very talented footballer, just not that dog in him physical. I think Bernardo done some very good stuff tonight. He looked composed when he was playing that kind of holding role, number 6 role. I agree with some of the criticism. I think he played too many backward passes. There were occasions where I could hear the words of Ange Postecoglou in my head, that scream of "stop passing it back," and I kind of felt there were occasions where he could have looked to play it forward a bit more. But he certainly looked pretty composed and managed that position pretty well. I think him himself alongside Engels need to up their physical game. I want to see these guys who are quite big, they are quite tall. Trust me, I've stood next to Bernardo. He's a big lad. I want to see them use that in matches. I want to see them bully opposition players off the ball a little bit, because that does happen to us on quite a few occasions. Interestingly enough, a few people were giving Sinisalo a bit of criticism at half time. McLaughlin P. came in to say, I think I prefer Sinisalo now he's well ready. Well, he did make a good save in the penalty shootout, guessed right, and I think he had a couple of decent moments in that half. I'm like a lot of fans. I'm not massively comfortable with the kind of passing back to the goalkeeper. I feel as though we sometimes play ourselves into trouble. Sometimes there's too much weight on the pass, and sometimes I'm not sure we need to make those decisions to pass back and play it out within our box, because one mistake against quality opposition and you could be a goal down. So yeah, but I think what we've seen of Sinisalo from last season into pre-season, I think he's looking still a very capable backup, and would, for me, still be very much the number 2 choice behind Kasper Schmeichel. But if he continues developing the way he is and takes his opportunities, then it could very well be in for some first team football. As I've said on here before, I would like us to utilise players like Sinisalo and maybe the League Cup competition domestically. Just have a League Cup first choice 11 as it were, maybe comprised of some of the senior players and some of the maybe squad depth players, and allow them to develop and maybe bring a couple of youths through as well. But we know the pressure. Being at a club like Celtic, you are expected to win every game, so maybe too risky. Let's see, Alan Robertson, was the offside goal a decent finish by Shin? Yeah, I think it was. I think he showed good appetite, he showed good energy in there. I think he's certainly got what looks like good physical characteristics, pace, bit of strength. He's actually not as, I thought he was a bit smaller than what he was, but he actually stood up and looked had a bit of physical stature about him. So yeah, keen to see with more of that. Let's see. Ian comes in to say, disagree with comments from host Chris. Let's get right to it. It doesn't. Paul John's back in the first opportunity, trust me. We know Ida and Kenny not good enough. Yamada worth a spot at the start of the season. Yeah, I'm not sure which my comments are particularly disagreeing with. I think it's a debate worth having. I think the Yamada is very much the unknown quantity at the moment. He's obviously bought and brought in for a reason, and I think he did his chances no harm. It will be interesting to see how the manager views it for the first game of the season. Obviously, Ida's played, Kenny's played from the start tonight. I think they've all had decent moments and some not so good moments throughout pre-season. Yamada's maybe the one that's, as I say, has got that unknown quantity. So it will be interesting, Ian, to see who comes in at the start of the season, who eventually takes that berth. My view on Ida, for example, has always been that he's the B plan player. He is the player who comes in for when we need a different option. I felt sometimes we had that with Kyogo. We knew what Kyogo could bring to the table. Ida had very much the more physical element. I think when he does come a bit deeper, he can help build the play. We saw it against Kilmarnock a couple of seasons back to great effect. I think that there was a little element to that against Ajax, but not to quite the same effect. Kenny, I think, has done probably his profile the most good throughout pre-season. An assist, a goal, I think a couple of goals possibly, an assist. And it's whether or not he can break through into the manager's plans, or if he's again another contender to go out on loan or be sold off. I do think there's a talented player there though. So yeah, I guess I'm not sure if I answered your question there or reinforced your point. I'm not sure, but I think there's a debate to be had about that number 9 spot, as it were. Steve McFarlane comes in to talk about Bernardo. Yeah, Bernardo looked fantastic. I think he looked okay. I'm not sure I would go quite as full of praise of that. I think it's a player that we need to see more of. Is what I would say. I would like to see more of Bernardo. Here you come in to say, I was never a big fan of Trusty last season. Have to say he's been brilliant this pre-season. Well done, big man. I think he started off, he was a bit shaky in the first game where he was playing with a lot of the younger players, and maybe that was just the responsibility. And obviously it was first game for everyone, right? I do think he's looked more solid in recent appearances, so I would agree with that. As I say, the big test is when we actually get into the bread and butter of the season, and can he do it consistently? We've levelled that a few players. Mick R comes in to say Yamada is an understudy to learn from a proven striker. Mick, is that a striker that's still to come in, do you think, or is that one that's there? Because it's a difficult one, right? There is this perception that some players have been brought in as project players. Anamura had that kind of labelled at him. Brendan Rodgers' initial comments about him seem to reinforce that, but he's actually looking now more like a first-team capable player. Yamada, do we give him the same sort of patience and say, well, actually, let's see what he can do? But you may very well be right. Maybe the intention is that Yamada will maybe take on the Kenny spot and Kenny will move out, for example. So it'll be interesting to see. Like many, I thought what we saw in flashes tonight was pretty good from Yamada. So yeah, let's give him the benefit of the doubt for the moment, but it will be interesting. Yeah, Jonathan Brown, I completely agree with this. I didn't like the Shin penalty run up. It was a cracking penalty. I don't like these start-stop penalties. I'm kind of old school. I like the kind of full run up and just bluter the thing. And when he stopped the second time, I fear the worst. I thought that's going to be saved. But to be fair, he put it in, and I do want to give credit because that couldn't have been an easy decision to go up and take it. So maybe shows a degree of confidence in the player that he did want to go up and take the penalty. So yeah, credit where it's due. Sitcom comes and say play against a team of mercenaries and the referee looked bought. Well done, Celtic. Yeah, referee wasn't great tonight, was he? I don't think it impacted our performance too much, but let a couple of bad challenges go, particularly the one in James Forrest. I was quite happy to book players for dissent, but not necessarily for bad challenges. And I thought he was a bit. He didn't give fouls when he should have. The advantage decisions didn't seem to work very well. And yeah, but I don't think he was really up to the pace of the game. It looked as though he was a bit out of breath actually. So yeah, maybe not one that the referee will remember, but I suppose very inconsequential in terms of the the match itself. Green Day 67 comes in. Yamada did well, like and trusty. Yep, I agree with that. Let's see. Trish TF comes in to say talking about a kit. Yeah, well, we like to cover it. We always talk about kits. We've got someone who runs a podcast who wrote a book all about kits and jerseys. So we do like to talk about the kit. To be fair, we've seen so many kit releases. I think it would be remiss of us not to discuss it. But it was interesting to see the second kit get the run out tonight. Kind of quite an interesting looking kit. Quite a lot of black. I think when you look at it at a distance, or certainly on the television screen, don't necessarily see the detail so much. But it looked okay on the players. Probably better than some of the promo videos, I would say. As I say, everyone's got opinions on that. But yeah, we'll talk about everything Celtic if we can, including the kits. Let's see. Get some other. Well, that's an interesting take actually. Love it. Bernardo far better than Engels for me. Now let's talk about Engels a little bit because he is someone that does seem to prompt a lot of discussion. He's come into the preseason with a lot of questions hanging over his head from many supporters. Some people saying give him time, he's going into his second season, this is where he'll step up. I've been kind of in that camp myself. Other people saying, he's not contributing as much given the outlay for him, which, may very well be fair. It was a huge amount for us to pay for a player. So we do want to see, kind of more return on investment, as it were. Some people kind of, split down the middle. Would we say that overall in the pre-season that Engels is done enough to change anyone's opinion, or is there still very much question marks over him? My view on it would be that I think there's still a big question mark. I think he's got a big challenge ahead of him with what we've seen of Nygren, for example, and the partnership in particular in that midfield three between Kalmak, Hatate and Nygren. I think Engels may struggle to take a starting berth at the start of the season. It looks to me like the manager's maybe pointing towards that prior mentioned three being the starting midfield partnership, but we may see something different on the first game. We do know that Engels has quality. We do know that he can play well. I look at both Engels and Bernardo, and to an extent, I'm still struggling for both players to understand what role they are expected to play. I know that the manager likes to have a bit of adaptability within the team. And like to have players that can play kind of multiple roles, multiple positions. But I look at Nygren, his position looks very, very clear to me. It looks like the attacking midfielder. Luke McCowan, I kind of view similar, albeit I think McCowan's got a lot to develop in his game. I thought he showed a bit of fight tonight. In fact, Barry Rubble's come in to echo my point there. McCowan's great. Yeah, he doesn't mind kind of getting in players' faces, which I do quite like. I do think there's elements of his game he needs to work on. But as we saw tonight, he's good at getting into positions where he can have a shot, and he's not afraid to have a shot. And he was very, very unlucky with the excellent one that came off the post. But McCowan and Nygren, their role for me looks very clear. They look like they are very much the attacking players. Hatate, I think, again, quite innovative, bit risky, attacking largely, but can help out do some of that defensive work. In Kalmak, I think, box to box, that's his role. We don't necessarily have that nasty number 6 that we want. And we look at the characteristics of Engels and Bernardo, big guys, big physical guys. They should be using that, and I think maybe cementing the defensive midfield role, the defensive playmaker. That's just my opinion. I'd be interested to hear some alternative views, but that's how I would see kind of Bernardo and Engels. And maybe then we'll start to see the benefit of both players. Ian, you're back in. Anamura made a great start to life with Celtic. Shin looks stronger at hold-up play than either. Quicker too. Yeah, well, like I say, I think we have to temper expectations. It is just a pre-season friendly. It is 45 minutes worth of football, and the real test will be when he actually gets regular starts or regular game time. Can he show that consistency and maintain that standard, which is so difficult at this club. Let's see. I'll try and get some more recent comments here. Brown Mora, you're back in. Double denim horses for courses with KT and Anamura. If you want to wing back KT, if you want to invert the fullback, Anamura looks a lot more comfortable inside, in my opinion. I think that's a great point. Yeah, and ties into kind of what I said about Ida and another. I think you want to have plan A and plan B players. Anamura, maybe, the kind of player that if you're well ahead in the game, you bring him on, you can actually, get back, he can help, build on your lead, for example, that type of thing. KT, I think, he looks more comfortable defensively. He looks more natural defender. What I've seen in pre-season from KT is a willingness to kind of come inside and support the centre-back. Anamura does look much more attacking. But I think those aren't bad options to have. And actually what we've seen with Anamura is he does look as though he's got a bit of ability in the air. And as we saw, he shrugged off a couple of players today quite well using his physicality. So yeah, at this moment in time, if I was looking at any of those players and thinking, who would I be comfortable enough, fitting right into the first team squad, I think Anamura is certainly one of them. Ian Roy, welcome, sir. I hope you're well. Over when you're home, we're so much better without Kenny and Ida. Again, I'm hesitant to go too strongly on that because we've not seen enough of Yamada. But the jury's definitely out on both players, right? And I do think Ida, like Engels, for example, has got a lot to prove this season. He's had a full pre-season. The first time he's had that, so no longer has that kind of. I don't want to say excuse, but he no longer has that rationale for maybe not getting up to speed quickly. So he should be at the peak of his powers. Kenny, I think there's a player there. I just think maybe a season at a competitive level, regular game time, regular goals, because I don't think the player's ever going to be able to come in and make a huge impact coming in for 5 or 10 minutes at a time. So, it really comes down to the manager, right? And what he thinks. A few people done that. I'm going to bring this up just to stop my ego. Chris, you've done a great job, better than that Paul John Dykes. I really have not. I mean, the Paul John is the master and can do this in his sleep. But I really do appreciate the sentiment, and I appreciate everyone that's helping, contribute and support. I know it's late on a Saturday night. Somebody made the point earlier. I must have a very understanding wife. She's asleep. She's asleep in the other room. She's like, I'm having a little night. You go and knock yourself out. I'm going to have to get off soon and go and get a little guy to sleep though. So that'll be fun. Jerry Smith comes in, and you're on Facebook, so yeah, welcome, Jerry. Good to see you. And fair play to Jamesy playing 90 minutes. Yeah, that I thought that was quite unusual. I thought if anyone would maybe get taken off, it would have been Jamesy Forrest. But credit to him, and he was still making a contribution quite late in the game. So that was nice to see. As I say, I think there's still a contribution to be made by Jamesy Forrest. I don't think he is that first team starter anymore, maybe in cup competitions or games like that. But you think about the impact he can make off the bench using the game intelligence he's had and developed and cultivated over the years. That ability to bring in players to read a game. And as we saw tonight, he can take a tackle. So, it was good to see that. Just very, 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 very fortunate he didn't get injured. That was a very bad tackle by the Al-Ahli player. Let's see. Paul Bosas, welcome to the show, mate. Oh, if I can get your comment, come up with that. Bernardo was great. Needs to play more often. Donovan showed good things. Yamada already better than Kenny. I'm loving the enthusiasm for Yamada. I did try and pick moments out for him tonight, but it's nice to see that he seems to have impressed people. So maybe he's impressed the manager to the same degree. It'd be interesting to see who comes on at St Mirren. What I would say is that he came in. He didn't look out of place, which is the key thing. You want somebody to come in and look like they belong in the team, and I certainly felt he did that. Engels should start every game. That's an interesting viewpoint given some of the comments. And Carter Vickers looks better than expected. Yeah, I thought CCV there was a big step up. I'll talk about him first. I thought it was a big step up from the previous week. I mean, look, it's never easy to come into a game midway through when you're just getting back from an injury. And I always think Carter Vickers' best sort of attribute, my favourite word, as many people point out, but I think his best attribute is his ability to read the game, and kind of get ahead of the attacker and position himself well. And I thought he did that in portions tonight again. So that for me is one of his biggest strengths. But I think, as many people have said, I think him's Trusty did quite well, and it was great to see AJ getting some minutes in the first half. To mention, I think he didn't look, he didn't have a bad game, but that he's got big level. Let's see who else we've got there. Yeah, love it. I noticed this as well. Good to see Jota with the squad after the game. We've seen him actually quite a few times in pre-season. The good thing is he's up, he's walking, he looks healthy. Obviously, it's a really bad injury. You kind of hope, does he go down the route of like a Henrik Larsson, coming back from a real bad injury and comes back and just gets that second lease of life and breaks all records. That would be nice to see. I've seen lots of players. One of my former favourite players, the Italian player Del Piero. I remember he had a similar injury. It kept him out for a year, and he really struggled to get his confidence back, and eventually got it back and went on to help Italy win the World Cup. But you do worry about what type of player will he come back, and he is. He's one of these inventive, flair players that you want to have in your team. And I think, we need that creativity. And I don't think we ever got the chance to see him back to his full fitness when he returns. So, yeah, I'm a big fan, as you can see from the picture over my shoulder. So I'm looking forward to seeing Jota hopefully back as soon as possible, but most importantly, as healthy as possible. Let's see, Green Days 67 coming in. Ida does not have the Celtic mentality. I think there's a pressure at our club. A lot of people talk about the Farmers League and the poor league standard and that kind of thing, but what they seem to forget is the stature of our club and the expectation to win every game. I'm not sure there are many other clubs in European or even world football where you have that constant, continual pressure to win every game. So it is a tough mentality for players to have, and you really sink or swim up here. And we've seen good players come in and they've done it in other leagues, they've done it in other teams, and they can't quite step up to the mark at Celtic. And I think that's a reflection of how tough the challenge is. So I wouldn't necessarily rule Ida out of being able to handle the pressure. I think he's shown in big moments in the Champions League. He's shown at different times that he can come in and do it. I think the big problem for Ida is consistency. I think he needs to show that he can do it week on week and really establish. He had a good chance when Kyogo left, but he just never seemed to be able to quite grasp the opportunity. So you're hoping again that if he gets it, that he can do that, because we want every player to succeed, right? But I would agree. I think everyone's on a kind of time dependency here. If they don't do it relatively soon, then your chances start to dwindle down. So yeah, I'm not going to question Ida's mentality, but what I would say is I do recognise the challenge on at playing at this club. And Don Curly Worley comes in and says something a little bit similar. Said, like Big Kenny and wish him well, but he's never a Celtic player. I think the potential for him to be a good player for Celtic is there. I'm not entirely sure he's ready yet. For me, he looks like a player that needs a good, successful season at a decent level and potentially come back. But, if we get a decent bid for Kenny, would be prepared to let him go and maybe look elsewhere. Again, it's a little bit like we've said with players like Stephen Welsh. How many opportunities do you give them? How many years do you wait for them to make the breakthrough? So I agree. I like the player as well. I think he's got some decent characteristics, some decent strengths to his game. But I'd like to. I think a loan would benefit him, and same with Osmond as well, who has said, "Come on," and it looked all right tonight, but I think maybe just needs that game time. How are we doing for time? Couple of minutes left, so we'll see if we can get a few more points. And Pep Rex, Celtic was struggling for goals this season. If you're mad, I can't get them all. Yeah, Brendan does seem to have this attitude where he wants to see goals coming from all over the park, and I like to see that as well. He doesn't want to necessarily rely on a striker, and we've spoken about that. I don't know whether that means the days of 25 to 30 goal strikers at Celtic are maybe gone. What you want is your Maeda to come in and make a reasonable contribution, but I think where we're struggling a little bit is on the wings. You want to see if Maeda is going to be on the left wing for part of the season, until Jota gets back, for example. You want to see him play more like the inside forward. And on the other side, you want, somebody that can do the kind of a Bada role, cut inside and contribute with the goal. So not necessarily getting to the byline and cross, but actually, drifting in, being played in and coming in and lay it into the box and getting those goals. So, I think we need to enhance the talent on the wings for us to get the goals elsewhere. Negrin looks as though he's got a couple of goals in him as well, though. And as we saw from last season, Kalmak still got the ability to put a couple in, as has Hattati. So there are definitely goals within the team. It's just whether or not we can find the right formula to bring them out. Monty, haven't seen for a wee while. Good to see you, sir. Watch the Acsom old board stuff. Yeah, this is at Acsom, the second part of the Save Our Celts kind of dual episode. The first one with Jim Orr just sitting there like a talking head, which was fantastic. And then this one was very much based around archive footage. But yeah, brought a lot of memories back, and we had good people in this fight. And a lot of those good people are still trying to fight the same sort of fight. Monty, not only our own Jim Orr, who is an absolute living legend, but it is amazing to look back and see. I mean, I was only about 13, 14 when that was kicking off, but I still remember it well, and worried that my team was going to go, was going to be no more. And that was in the midst of Rangers dominance, which was not a nice time to be a fan. But as we saw, Ferguson and all the good people around them, including Jim, their voice was heard, and indeed they're a great reason for the success we've had now. Folks, that is us just about time. I'll just check and see if there's any other comments. I'm sorry if I didn't get a chance to bring up all your comments. There's so many, and we're over 2,000 strong again on a Saturday evening for a pre-season friendly. Incredible support. And listen, on behalf of myself, and I'm sure on Paul John as well, I really appreciate the support and everybody sticking with you. I know it's not great having to listen to one person speak all the time. Even when I'm contributing, I get accused of speaking too much, which is probably fair. So I do really appreciate everybody coming on and sticking with me tonight. I'm going to go and try and get a little bit of bed. I'm also going to go and grab myself a little glass of wine, because this has been a tough shift and my throat's killing me. But it has been an absolute pleasure being on with all of you. So we will be back on Monday. Paul John, I think, will be back to usual duty, so look forward to that. But in the meantime, have a great evening, everybody, and thanks again for joining me on a Celtic State of Mind.